Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted with Dr. Stu. We just made that name up tonight, and we're going to go with that.
That's what we're doing.
So tonight's episode is going to be pretty straightforward. What vaccines does my dog need? So if I have a new puppy and I'm bringing them home, and let's just say I have a medium breed dog, I don't even know if that matters.
Nah, it doesn't matter.
Fine, then you know what? I'm bringing in a puppy. It's 10 weeks old. What vaccines do they need, and what should I be looking for? Because I'll tell you why I think this question's so important. I hear from everyone at home that I feel like they're giving me vaccines I don't need.
Yeah.
Which ones do you need to ensure optimal health and safety? And then we can expand upon that.
Yeah. Take home your 8-week-old puppies. Generally, when puppies leave the nest, there's a few things that you want to get as far as your core vaccines.
Right.
You know, we call them core vaccines, and some of them are required by law. Usually just rabies, and some of them are considered core vaccines because they're largely historically devastating viruses for dogs. There's a few others out there that have popped up and come and go throughout the years, depending on their importance, you know. But in general, what we see is that breeders and even if you get a puppy from a rescue, they'll be vaccinated early on with a parvovirus or a distemper combo virus.
Is that the DA2PP or something? Okay.
Yep.
Now, what does that all stand for, DA2PP?
So the D is for distemper.
Okay.
The A is for adenovirus. And the P is for parvovirus.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll get a para-influenza in there, which is more of like an upper respiratory virus. So you'll get that DA2P, which is like there's two P's in there. And so there's different variations on that. Sometimes your bordetella vaccine includes the para-influenza. So you'll see a bordetella, para-influenza, but
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, but it's usually just distemper virus.
Yeah.
Adenovirus and parvovirus.
Okay.
And each of those viruses have different concerns, which, you know, you could Google those and learn a lot about them.
Yeah.
I think the easiest one that people have heard about probably is parvo. And parvovirus is,
because there's no cure.
Well, is devastating for puppies. You know, it kills puppies, it kills whole litters very quickly. Dehydration, diarrhea, intestinal bleeding, lots of things. And the problem with parvo is that virus is so resilient in the environment that it can just live there. It can be in the environment for months to years sometimes. So vaccinating against that for your young puppies is really important.
Okay.
So a lot of people, I've actually had this question a few times. Why does my puppy have to get so many vaccines, but then my older dog doesn't?
Yeah.
One of the reasons is that your puppy's immune system is just not that robust yet. So we booster these things every 3 to 4 weeks until we get to a certain point.
In the early going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually until they're about 16 weeks old.
So if I come in at 10 weeks, I'm going to get one round. What will I typically get on that 10 week?
Yeah, I mean, at 10 weeks,
what do I need?
You'll probably get your second distemper combo, which is again,
because the breeder already, or the shelter or the adoption center already gave one.
Distemper, adenovirus, and parvo.
Okay, the second round of that.
Yep, second round of that. And the next step after that would be, you know, or what I was talking about initially really is that you just want to booster these things every 3 to 4 weeks as a young puppy to protect them against these risks until they're older. Their immune system catches up big time. So like one shot might last for years after that.
Okay.
Right. So that's where we get into the bigger vaccine schedules. But to get back to that schedule, you know, they might have their first one at the breeder or the shelter, you know, 8 to 10 weeks old,
I
maybe
bring them
11
home,
weeks old.
Get in the second round.
Get your second round. And 3 to 4 weeks later, you get your third distemper vaccine, and it'll be good for a full year at that point.
So when does rabies and bordetella possibly come into this equation?
So rabies,
assuming it didn't happen already in the initial shot.
Yeah, so rabies is typically given around 12 weeks old or 3 months old. There's a couple reasons for that. So number one is that optimally the immune system's at a point where it can develop enough immunity with that one shot that we can get them through the next year or so. And the other big reason is it's typically required by law in all 50 states.
Okay.
At that point.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is definitely one of them.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But the protocols as a puppy are all based on the health of the immune system. Like, where's it at? And how can it pick up these these antigens and these different viruses that are in these vaccines to be able to create the immunity. And they're not quite strong enough yet to just give one and be like, boom, we're done.
Okay.
So at 12 weeks, you'll get rabies. You should be around your second or third distemper vaccine. And then about 16 weeks old, you can get your 1-year distemper vaccine and be basically done with your core shots.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's bordetella fall on that?
So bordetella is a tricky one. So there's a couple different versions of bordetella vaccines. You know, there's intranasal, there's oral versions, there's an injectable version. The oral and the nasal version are basically the same. They work on the same principle by exposing the organism that were in question to the mucous membranes. So we got
the organism in question.
Yeah, meaning bordetella bronchoseptica. So
okay, I don't know what that means.
That is the.
So tell everyone at home.
So
I'm with you at home.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so this is why we bring in an expert. There's going to be this. What's this gap? How do we take this amazing knowledge and make it understandable for you at home? And I am that average.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically there are a lot of different organisms that cause the kennel cough syndrome.
Okay.
The big one, though, that we usually vaccinate for is bordetella.
Okay.
Which is the actual name of the bacteria.
Okay.
Okay. So that is what we're trying to protect against, that specific bacteria to stop those clinical signs. And so we create that local immunity around the mucous membranes. It's not a whole systemic immunity. All right. So we can stop it at the point of entry, because the majority of infections come in through the mouth or the nose. So that's why it's given that way.
Okay.
We also have these dogs that want to bite you and you can't get up to their nose and squirt it in.
Yeah.
So we give the injection.
Okay.
Right? But that can be given around 12 weeks just fine.
Okay.
You know, we can do it at that point, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and it's good for, depending on the dog, 6 to 12 months.
And you know, something random that I just heard recently for the first time in my 7 years of working in this industry was a lady called me and I mean, she could have been wrong. She admitted that. But she said, I'm going in for my second round of bordetella. I mean, that I had never even heard that.
Like a booster?
Yeah. Is that even a thing? Because I was like taken back by it. I'm like, I don't even know what this means. I thought there was one shot and you're good for a year.
Yeah. So saying it's good for a year is probably not accurate. If we were to titer a lot of these dogs, it's probably not good for a year.
Okay.
But that's because we have a lot of kennels now that are requiring it every 6 months.
There's a lot of kennels around here that do that.
But as far as boostering it, like initial series of vaccines, that's not really something we have to worry about. There's some situations that we've seen where if we have a dog that's recovering from bordetella or kennel cough syndrome.
Yeah.
Real quick, syndrome is a term that means a collection of signs. So signs are things that we see outwardly in the patient. So as a vet, I only see signs because I see what the patient tells me or showing me. Symptoms are what you feel and what you can tell somebody. So if humans feel symptoms, but a doctor sees signs.
Oh, I get the difference.
Right. So just so they know, because syndromes are like we see a bunch of signs. So kennel cough syndrome is what we see. Like we see the coughing, maybe sniffling, maybe kind of weird breathing, maybe they're lethargic, have a fever or whatever. There are some situations with kennel cough syndrome where, you know, you may booster your kennel cough vaccine at the tail end of a dog recovering from it, and it might help them get better. That is a situation maybe that you're talking about. That's a possibility. But your core vaccines are going to be rabies and your distemper combo. Your distemper combo consists of those 3 other vaccines. In Western PA, we're concerned about leptospirosis and Lyme disease.
Okay.
So those are 2 ones that we would say are optional and, you know, extra protective ones. Leptospirosis is a major concern. I honestly, as far as Lyme disease goes, I've seen so many Lyme positive dogs in the last 10 years and so few actually sick dogs that I'm not 100% convinced that it needs to be given all the time.
Really?
That's
I mean, if I'm sitting at home, I mean, I'm sitting here right now. I'm surprised by
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't need to be given, because
right.
the thing about
You're
it,
seeing dogs actually come in who are Lyme disease positive and don't have any symptoms?
yeah. So when we run a snap test,
Yeah.
there's a couple versions of this.
4DX or whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a couple versions of it. The Acuplex one, we get positive tests a lot.
Mhm.
And these dogs are asymptomatic. They don't have limping. They don't have any fevers,
Mhm.
issues. They have positive antibodies for Lyme, and
Mhm.
owners never knew, and we don't know when they were exposed either. So
Yeah.
but if I was to say, if somebody's arguing with me about like what shots do I give,
Yeah.
I generally, I'm gonna lean on the side of I would rather you get lepto.
Yeah.
Once you get leptospirosis, and let's make sure you're on a good flea and tick medication to at least have some coverage against those ticks.
No. Healthcare in the human world and veterinary care have become very much mirror images of one another, where now it seems like you're just pumping out these appointments every 15, 20 minutes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, now that you're saying like lepto is almost more important than the Lyme vaccine, what is leptospirosis?
Well, I'm talking about Western PA.
Okay, fair enough. Which is where our clients live.
Yeah. So lepto is endemic here in Western PA for sure. But leptospirosis is a bacteria that we call a spirochete.
Yeah.
And these are things that people can Google and learn about. But
sounds familiar from biology.
Yeah, but it is a bacteria that is, if you have a clinical infection, is extremely dangerous.
Okay.
We're talking liver disease, kidney failure. They get jaundiced, and this can be spread to humans as well.
Okay.
So it's extremely dangerous, and it can be spread through just stagnant pools of water out in the woods, urine from infected animals. It can get in through just open cuts. We've seen dogs that went and hunted and killed like a rat that they found, and they can end up getting leptospirosis.
Just found it in the neighborhood.
Yep.
Okay.
So things like that can happen, and unfortunately, clinical lepto infections are extremely dangerous.
How common is that?
It's a lot less common than it used to be because it's been vaccinated for quite a lot.
Okay.
There's still pushback on lepto vaccines because there's this historical idea that, especially from breeders in the past 30 years, that it's caused a lot of problems and reactions. That is not true anymore.
Okay.
It certainly was true at one point. Lepto used to cause a lot of problems. It is not true any longer. So vaccines are non-adjuvanted. An adjuvant means that it has a special, how do I explain this easy? It's got a special chemical added to the vaccine to create just a little bit more immunity. But
it's like a booster.
So it causes the immune system to be more excited about the vaccine. Okay. And by being more excited, it's going to come in and pick it up and create a lot more immunity, more antibodies.
Okay.
But without that little extra chemical, you're
like caffeine for the
like caffeine for that vaccine.
There you go.
Caffeine for the vaccine. Yeah, you got it.
There we go.
So there's that, but that is no longer a major issue whatsoever. And we recommend lepto to every dog in Western PA at this point, especially small dogs.
The tiny ones.
Yeah.
Like small breeds.
They're closer to the ground.
Yeah.
They have more access to potentially exposure. Especially hunting dogs that are out swimming, jumping in streams.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
All right. So in summary then, just recap. I get a puppy, I bring it home. I'm going to see you in approximately 10 weeks. What am I getting?
10 weeks?
Yeah.
If you come to me at 10 weeks,
yep.
Most certainly, I'm going to recommend we just do our probably our second distemper.
Yep.
And our first lepto booster.
Okay.
That's probably what we'll do. And we might do your bordetella.
Okay.
Maybe to streamline the visit process. But that's probably all we would do.
And then what? What's the next step?
And then the next step would be 4 weeks later.
Okay.
We're going to get you your rabies. Generally around that time, we'll probably do your final distemper booster and also your final lepto.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll be done around that point. You can decide on your Lyme disease at that point if you want.
So that being said, if that's the summary, there's people who often call and ask, hey, you know what? Like, I just brought a puppy home. I want to bring them to daycare. I want to do these things. Should I start doing anything right now? And my advice has always been, make sure they're fully vaccinated, keep them isolated as much as possible. Like no dog parks. Don't do that right away.
Sure.
Keep them at home, get them their vaccines, and then it's like the world opens up. Is that correct, or am I saying something?
Yeah, no.
Should I be giving better advice?
No, that's true. The only thing I would caution owners with is that you can't just get your vaccine and then 3 days later go to the dog park.
Oh God.
You need a couple of weeks for that. Your immune system has to build those antibodies and that kind of memory immunity, okay? So you can go out there. So
how many weeks would you wait?
I'd say 3.
Okay.
Just to be safe.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks, and you'd be okay at that point.
All right.
You know, and to be honest with you, man, I would tell you, like, rabies is really important, okay, because it's required and it's fatal if they were exposed, but it's far more important for just general infections that you get your distemper boosters. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, because rabies is in general, like in your neighborhood, it's pretty uncommon. You can't get that rabid raccoon that might come up on your porch.
Yeah.
But no, you want
there
your
was a
distemper
raccoon
boosters.
wandering along the road during daylight in Adams, right near the high school recently, the football field.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
auxiliary field.
They do happen.
Yeah, I mean,
they get
wandering right along the sidewalk.
they get
where
reported.
The kids are walking.
We get the emails from the state vet, like rabid raccoon was found.
Yeah,
it's so well controlled and monitored. You know?
Good.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's a pretty standard thing. You know, Colin, you've brought to me up in the past, like, questions about, like, are we over vaccinating different things? And I think it's possible sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, we might be in certain situations. I mean, there's certainly situations where we can decide, like, is there a case by case basis for this? Definitely. And I'm always open with owners in Pennsylvania. Like, you don't have to do anything. Yeah. I say you just have to have rabies.
That's the big one.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to go to dog parks that stay or go to kennels or something like that, you're going to have to get some other things. You know? But if you come to my clinic, like, I'm not going to force you to do distemper.
Right.
Okay. But I'm going to recommend at least your first boosters. You got to get through them. It's very important.
Yeah.
The early years, it's important. So,
there's been people who call me and say, like, hey, I vaccinated home and I see your requirements and I just don't do one of them. I'm like,
yeah,
tough luck.
Yeah.
Like, listen, there has to be a standard, and the advice I follow is what I get from you.
Yeah.
The advice I follow also takes into account the dog warden. I'm like,
you also have to keep into account the possibility of the liability. Like, what if that dog spreads a bunch of things to the other animals?
It's just not worth it.
It's just not
worth
it, man.
I mean, there's so few people who want to vaccinate at home and think that's advantageous.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, listen, it might work, but I'm sure there's a place for this that'll work well. It's just not here.
All right. Yeah, man. So that's kind of an overview to think about.
All right.
But if anybody has, like, questions, you know, about maybe some of the terms here, maybe you could leave some comments. There's definitely things you can Google and read about.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody is for the most part welcome to love their pet and sort of make decisions for their pet as they'd like to.
Yeah.
You know, but rabies is the one that's required.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, you know what? That in summary is then what we need for I'm bringing home a puppy. I'm going to see you at 10 weeks. I'm going to follow up and go from there, and then wait 3 more weeks to go to dog parks or whatever, and we're good to go.
Yeah, and that's just vaccines. There may be some other things like deworming.
Yeah.
We might talk about, like, heartworm and flea and tick, stuff like that.
Right.
You know, but
well, we can save that for another episode.
Yeah, it's another episode.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your insight on what vaccines my dog needs, and we'll go from there. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.